All right. Thank you, Atmaz. Yes, I, of course, am joined for the first time on the day by.
Oh, wow.
All right, I'm going to let you take us away with this deck selection screen because this is interesting.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, I love that everyone seems to be doing just having a cover that just doesn't give anything away, and Lizard just going with the quad yellow decks. So I'm sure one is going to be. I I have a couple of ideas what he's going to bring. So for CardNerd, it's really difficult to ban because you can't just guess. Which one is going to be the rush one? Probably one just the casual yellow tempo. One is going to be flyers, maybe. And he had like a really interesting Nat and aviary deck, so that might be interesting. Probably going to bring that one. And CardNerd really favoring his blue green.
Yeah, we of course see the Frog Tossers as the cover for everything on CardNerd's side. Lizard does opt to ban the only one which had mountains in the deck selection screen there, so we expect that to probably be more of a standard Rakoan list. Some of the other ones you can maybe alter a little bit, but you're not exactly sure what they are, so it does go for that. And Lizard, we know, will be all yellow, just depends on what we actually see coming out from them.
Okay, that looks like a blue-green jump, probably against the standard, the very well-known yellow tempo list, where you just try to get your storytellers down really quickly, just draw a lot of cards. And then with Blightborn Specters who draw stuff, or they get buffed every turn when your opponent has more than four cards. And just like that, he got the two combos to his deck, the most important ones, I guess. On Husks, he needs the Husks still, but he got the two important cards, so yeah.
Yeah, early on, that storyteller, as you're pointing out here, gives not only the cards to your opponent, which then ignites your, as we call it, the yellow fours package. So this Spectre on the board will start growing, but it also gives you the card draw that hopefully gets a Husk, and then you get that accelerated as well. So really strong opener by Lizard. That being said, fairly strong opener by CardNerd as well, with the blue jump cards starting out here, going to be able to accelerate that early Faria collection. I'm expecting this game to be over fairly quickly because whoever is able to grab hold of the early tempo probably should accelerate that throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, I agree with you. Especially like the Sun Tower, early, really important blue, just likes to get lances as efficiently as possible. And he got the Sunken Tower for that, so really good for that. And yeah, I can see Cardinal just overwhelm Lizard with this deck, because Lizard just likes to, let's say, sit back, get his Colossus reduced to 5 cost, then put pressure, and you don't really want to defend with your Colossus and stuff. And I can see that Lizard has to invest a lot of resource in just defending. So let's see how it's going to play out.
We see a little bit of an awkward movement line from Lizard here because the Sunken Tower was able to move that Spectre off of a direct line to collect and get this clear, but still does get the clear. The 4 attack now on the Spectre is actually really important. Even though it hasn't triggered its production effect, it still has enough attack that if a Ninja Toad is played from CardNerd's side, I believe the buff still takes it into a 4 health, or 3 health only, so it still dies actually.
Yeah, unfortunately, CardNerd had to waste his trainer buff on the Ninja Toad. That's unfortunate. I don't think there was another line where he could preserve that +1/+1.
It just
Yeah,
needed the collection from the Ninja Toad. That was the big thing there. Potentially could have gone for the Ninja Toads, or sorry, the Battle Toads first, and then snowballed collection next turn into a good Ninja Toad play. But in that situation, getting the +2 collection and then having the Ninja Toad or the Battle Toads, excuse me, in behind, really strong from CardNerd to set up a long-term game plan here.
exactly. CardNerd needs to make sure he doesn't lose his right side. And he did well in doing that, setting up the 2 Battletoads. Here, Ogre Adventure. Let's see if there's gonna be a good time to ever play it. There might be.
I think that was the best option out of them. You potentially could get value out of the Unstable Forgeling just because it's a matchup that's a little slower. Both players have a lot of movement naturally on their cards and have movement in cases of the Flash Wind, the Sunken Tower, that you can dictate trades over your opponent. So getting a production card like that that has extra attack building up slowly over time potentially pans out, but I think the Ogre Adventure is just better in most cases on Lizard's side.
CardNerd, there was a way for CardNerd to kill the Hunted Husk, but he decides to go for the double collector from Lizard, so yeah.
You can still get it with the Freedom Fighter, it just delays your lands too much, I think, to be worth it.
Could have like Sunken Tower the other frog, jumped on the only desert from Lizard and placed the land and just got it from there.
Right, would have been actually a very strong line because it would have given aggressive land as well, potentially for your... Oh, I can't actually think of what the card is. Escaping me at the moment. The 2/5 that gains 2 extra attack and jump when placed on the enemy well.
Oh, the Mystic Beast, yeah.
Mystic Beast, thank you. Yeah, so going for that line, as you were pointing out, getting an aggressive lake down in the bottom corner where the my merchant currently is would have been really strong from CardNerd's side.
But it's good now that CardNerd actually has the 2 forests, so he can use his hand buffs to get favorable trades. And it looks like the Lizard is starting to lose his left side from collection. But yeah, he needs to speed it up sooner or later, Lizard. So I think he's gonna drop the Colossus next turn, maybe. Ah, no, he can't do that. So Wind Soldier first.
Yeah, Wind Soldier ends up being a really good clear. You potentially would like that to be a Soldier instead because it deals with the Freedom Fighter as well as discounting your Colossus. But you can't really be picky some of the times. You go for the clear that you have, and Wind Soldier still lines up really nicely. Having a Soul Pact, you maybe could go Soul Pact. Is this a spot where you could get the Adventurer down?
Yeah, well, it's just really risky. He's just gonna play into potential another buff. He could consider just wasting his Flash Wind and just play the Colossus. Oh, okay. Okay, he's gonna go for fancy lines.
Yeah, going for the Flash Wind there. A lot of times you don't really even consider using its creature because the extra cost just isn't worth it. In this situation, getting that clear denies your opponent their entire right side collection. So a huge potential swing from Lizard, even though that Flash Wind costs the 2 Faria to move your opponent's creature. You've stopped them collecting 2 Faria next turn, so it ends up being a net equal trade.
CardNerd can decide to kill the Haunted Husk or just go for collection. Really want to get the collection just to play all these 5 costs. He he only has 5 cost cards in hand. 5 cost creatures.
Yeah, it's a situation where you really need to get something down again on the right side. The setup for both players right now is really contesting the left. So if that continues, CardNerd having a creature that can double collect every single turn just means he'll be able to accelerate. As you're saying, all of those 5-cost cards, if you don't have extra collection, you're having to either +1 from the power wheel so that you can play a single creature, or you're going for a buff, which then means that you're not able to reinforce with another creature. So CardNerd, if this collection doesn't stay there on the right side, will start to fall behind in this game, I would think.
Yeah, certainly. So I think he did a really good turn, and I don't see how Lizard is gonna clear this anytime soon. So he has to invest so many resources just to clear it. It's another. Well, okay, I guess ultimately only costs 4 mana. Reduction.
The big thing here as well on Lizard's side is the Husk is kind of in an awkward position.
Yeah, true.
Because you're not able to push your creatures into a more aggressive spot that also defends the Husk, because it's blocking the line that you'd like to go through.
So the line from Lizard made sure that CardNerd had to play another land, which he maybe didn't want to do, and the reduction on cannon carrier, Lizard probably didn't want that. Probably would have preferred it to be on Colossus. Yeah, I have a feeling that CardNerd is gonna run away with this game.
Yeah, definitely seems like it. It's the that early collection advantage right now, and Lizard kind of got on the bottom corner, just wasn't really able to get any follow-up after the merchants, and you've had this Husk procking, probably was the only damage to CardNerd, so it's procced 4 times, but it just hasn't been enough to snowball the advantage because CardNerd has been so good about reinforcing the right side every single turn.
Let's see. Don't see a good full clear, so he probably has to keep the Frog Tosser alive.
Otherwise, you go for Merchant can collect and clear the 2/1 Frog. You +1 and play Cannon Carrier and Soul Drain, because that gives you creatures on board.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be a good line, yeah. But if you keep the left side alive and stuff, I feel like he's just gonna lose the left side as well on top of that.
The left side I actually don't mind, but it's not in a position right now where it can double collect. Whereas if you leave the 4/1 Frog Tosser alive, you has to invest a land to get that double collection. But if it's left over there double collecting, then you continue at the same pace where you are behind every single turn. This actually blocks quite well. The Triton Warrior either has to trade into the 4/2 of the mech to be able to get 1 collection, or CardNerd again has to invest a land to collect and then value trade into the 2/4 of the Cannon Carrier. So it ends up being a little awkward. Lizard, I think, is guaranteed to collect next turn.
He played that really, really well. I think it's way more difficult for Lizard to play in this current situation than it is for CardNerd. Let's see. So let's see if he wants to. He's probably going to play Tide Lord, but is he going to play it on the left or the right side? It really depends on how he views this game. So he's going to go for the right side again.
Yeah, and that really tells you that CardNerd is playing the long game here. If you reinforce the left, you're trying to shut your opponent out right away and then push an advantage. CardNerd playing it to the right says, I'm just comfortable, double collect, and then I'll start to push. But for now, it is basically the same as it's been throughout the course of the game here. CardNerd just really trying to reinforce that double collection and out Feria advantage your opponent later on in the game.
Like Storyteller Soldrin is nice. I don't think you want to lose your 4-2. CardNerd has some troubles killing the 4-2.
Yeah, there's not really a good way, as you're saying, for CardNerd to deal with that. You do have Battletoads. The 2-2 can contest that 4-2, but that's kind of later on because you're having to play it, and then your opponent has to play the Toads, then you kind of have the chance to respond to it and protect that 4-2. So it's a really good swing, actually, by Lizard here. It now is a situation where we're potentially having just double collection from both players, and we're kind of reset on the board a little bit here.
Lizard did a really good job in winning his side back, and we see the change of approach from CardNerd now. He really tried to contest that left side, and all of a sudden he just wants to secure the right side. I think Lizard should just go Colossus now. Just put a bit of pressure. He's got his side back, so now going to this offensive.
Yeah, the kind of issue there is that Colossus ends up in a position where you are committing lands next turn as well. But if you're in a position where you don't mind that and your aggression is the way that you want to play it, then I think you're fine with it. In this situation, it sets up kind of the same because Shaitan Demon is the aggressive play, where the Colossus would have been exactly the same. This line just lets Lizard play a couple extra cards on top of the Demon instead of just the Colossus.
That was really nice. He even milled a Triton Trainer from CardNerd. Yeah, so he opted not to go for Colossus, just to play a Merchant and a Husk on top of that instead of the Colossus. And yeah, the burn damage from Shaitan Demon just never really matters because you have so many tools of healing with Soul Drains, the Husks, Storyteller, and so on.
Yeah, we actually have seen quite a few of those resources expended from Lizard's side. 7 deck. This has really been a control game from both players. And now, as you're saying, the Shaitan Demon, you don't really care about it. You at least have the Husk in a really protected position. So even if the Shaitan Demon survives for an extended period of time, it's really only dealing 1 because you are dealing 2, but you're also recovering 1 every single turn. And we see CardNerd now saying, okay, you've made the aggressive line, you've committed to this play, I'm committing to put pressure on you, and you now have to respond defensively.
These CardNerd doesn't mind buffing the Tide Lords because in Lizard's deck there's no Nightmare. So really, the 7/7 is never gonna get hard removed, so it just has to get traded down. Yeah, all of a sudden, just setting up lethal and just wait for from Lizard. Oh, there might be a Ninja Toad for lethal. The Husk, I forgot about it. Okay, that should be lethal, right?
Production from the Demon will deal 2, so your opponent's really at 11, which means you need 2 buffs here. 7/7 with the +2 from the Elderwood Embrace gets you to 9, +2 from the Guidance gets you to 11, so should be exactly like Nerd.
Yeah, that's a pretty fortunate top deck. I'm not
And
sure
there it
if
is.
Lizard would have had it next turn. The self-burn to close out game one.
I think that was really well played by CardNerd. Stuck to the strategy. I'll throw the well played over to Lizard as well. I think it was really good to get the tempo back and control the left side and regain that part of the board. But CardNerd played that strategy so well of just go double collection every single turn, reinforcing that right side. And then as soon as Lizard made the switch to go for an aggressive play, CardNerd just said, all right, I'm going for my aggressive play and you need to match me defensively or I'm going to win the race. And then had the buffs to close it out.
Yeah, that was a really cool game. Just very well played on both sides and just Lizard coming off short. Now we have game two, so CardNerd keeps, because he won, he keeps his deck that we just saw. And Lizard changing it up with Iona, which we don't see too often. The Windborn Emissary, Kalim, Sky Prodigy. So that looks like a flyer list. And I'm not sure. He might even run Nat in it, annoying Nat. I'm not sure if it's the list that I'm thinking it is, but maybe not.
Yeah, you were saying off the start that there was a yellow you were expecting to see with Nats and the aviaries in it. Seeing all of these flyers, potentially we would see the aviaries, and then that leads you to potentially we see the Nats. I can definitely understand where you're coming from with that. Will be another game that I think CardNerd should control just because of the extra movement inherent in his creatures. Has the jump, has the Sunken Tower, and then has the Frog Tossers as well for reach, or Ninja Toads potentially for good clears. In Lizard's side, even though you have the flying, which can extend over the lands, and you're not restricted in that way, you are a little more restricted in that your creatures, or I should say most of your creatures, only move one square at a time, outside of Kalim, of course. But CardNerd should have the kind of jump for movement advantage.
Yeah, Lizard has, yeah, as you mentioned, and he doesn't. We're used to having like Manta Rider and stuff like these with having a lot of charge too, but that's no longer the case. It's he might run Celestial Tower, which gives him a bit of movement, but other than that, CardNerd should have the movement advantage.
And even the Flash Winds just don't really end up the same way. Okay, there we see the combo, but it is a required combo piece. So you're investing Celestial Tower and Flash Wind, where your opponent has jump just on their creatures. So it is a position where to get those clears on your terms, we're going to have to see Lizard invest cards, whereas CardNerd can potentially just invest more creatures onto the board. So we kind of again are in this stalemate start where whoever gets that first advantage is probably going to snowball the game.
Yeah. I wonder why CardNerd didn't go for the trade last turn. He could have sunk tower, used sunk tower. I didn't have the mana because, yeah, it was one off. Okay, never mind. So the Celestial Tower is super nice just to, let's say, answer the jump creatures. So you can choose trades on your own now. And that emissary is now threatening the Triton Warrior, the 5/5. Blizzard can full clear with Spirit's Theft and even steal a frog. A good Flash Wind to collect just to play the frog as well.
Yeah, that's really strong if he wants to go. Is there anything in Lizard's deck that ends up being past the 4 deserts that he currently has, or are we just going to see draw?
Now that he's on 4 already, he might run Champion, the 5/5 charge 5. he runs them because he runs Spirit Theft, so you run 4 lands already. Might as well go the extra mile.
Right, and it does give you a lot of control over the board. It gains that extra movement that we're talking about for Lizard that you're potentially not having on your creatures inherently. So
Exactly.
if that is the case, then we're looking at Lizard probably drawing until you hit the champion, and then once you actually need the land, then you would develop it.
Probably. But now maybe depends on how he wants it to play. He could just go double neutral. Oh, that's clear. That's nice. So, as you mentioned, as soon as someone gets the advantage, the board, the game is gonna get really hard for the opposing player. And Lizard has got that advantage, and he will be able, with all his jump and charge 3 Celestial Tower, he will just control whatever CardNerd is gonna play. So it's gonna be hard for CardNerd to come back.
Yeah, it's kind of the way that we saw game 1 go. CardNerd had the double collection, and while both players were fighting over one side of the board, they were each only collecting one or maybe getting the odd second collection on that side. But CardNerd had the right side and was double collecting every single turn and eventually snowballed that advantage. In this one, we now have Lizard. Both players are fighting over the left side, but Lizard has had a creature on the bottom right most turns of this game. And that has ended up enabling the extra collection that has really given this advantage. Then we see another clear come out. Water Elemental can be even played just as a random creature. Yeah. And now you have every single space on the board available to you because CardNerd is just that little bit behind that you're just not really able to come back in the game.
Wants a double collection. He needs to, yeah, exactly, play follower on the left just to protect from Frog Toss or just give no way back into this game.
When we look at the Faria pools right now, CardNerd on 4, Lizard on 4, but that is Lizard just invested a bunch of Faria onto the board and quad collected on that turn. CardNerd has nothing on board right now, and even something like the Frog Tosser that potentially could get you back in the game just doesn't really have good options for it. You can use it on Kaleem, but the 2/2, maybe gets cleared out right away. Actually, guaranteed gets cleared out right away. You can't really use it on the Water Elemental or you lose the Frog, so
I'd be surprised if CardNerd or Lizard will keep a creature from CardNerd alive on board. So whenever CardNerd plays something, it just immediately gets removed, and I think that's gonna be till the end of the game. So best thing CardNerd can do now is just prepare for next game, think about what he wants to tackle Lizard stack, and just maybe see more cards that he's gonna play.
yeah, and there it is. CardNerd surrenders. Lizard will take game 2, and just like that, we've even series. 1-1. Generally, in a series like this, you would expect that the first game win does favor CardNerd a little bit. Now, that of course depends on matchups, but you win game 1, your opponent then responds. You're able to respond with a potential counter deck to whatever they're playing. And then if that carries out, you eventually win with that game 1 advantage. But we'll have to see if the lineups end up playing out that way, if CardNerd does have a favored counter deck going into game 3 here.
So he opted to go for the blue jump version, which is probably the one we're used to, where you have a lot of ramp with the elementals. He probably only runs wood elemental because in his other lists he had the water elemental. So this is probably a bit more green oriented, less jump. Oh wow, look at Lizard's hand. He runs Azurai. So this is not the net deck, pretty sure. This is something else. That is cool though.
Azra is a very interesting one because a lot of the flyers have large attack values but low health. So we see it exactly here, the 5/2 of the Demon Wing. The Windborn Emissary in hand is a 5/3 when its effect is active. So having Azurai in there, I wonder if that's just potentially you're getting good decreases of your opponent's attack values, and then you're able to actually generate value clears that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get.
Wonder if he's gonna play it. I feel like Ezra is a card. When you're ahead, it's great, and it just helps you win even more. But it just doesn't do anything once you're behind. So
Right.
those games
Yeah,
are not sure.
Yellow Flyers, I think, is a very difficult list to regain tempo advantage. Once you have it, exactly as you're saying, it's very easy to control the game because you're able to generate the extra collections, generate extra clears. But if you fall behind, your big creatures that exist in the deck, you either get them out and they're immediately destroyed, or you just don't ever have the Varia to play something like Azurai.
Lizard would have loved probably to get the kill on, or a movement trick to kill the Rainforest adventure. But it's gonna get I think it's a +1/+1 buff, so it would be out of reach of the Demon Wing.
Yeah, really interesting to see the Explorer run here, just because it, of course, was changed a while back to activate while on board instead of just being a battle cry. So you can go for early plays like this where we get the Explorer down, and then as you develop extra lands onto the board, we see it gain those additional stats, and now is a position where it has a little more durability and is a little bit awkward for Lizard to clear. You generally wouldn't want to go for the Spirit Theft on it because you're not playing the same lands that it gets that value that it does for your opponent.
Oh, I wonder how Azrai interacts with emissaries. So drains 2 attack. So is he gonna be on 3 attack, the emissary, or back on 5? Because I'm not sure.
Well, the emissary won't get affected on Lizard's side.
He's playing Azurai. Are you sure?
Yeah, it only drains from enemies.
Oh, from enemy. Oh my god. I read that wrong. Yeah, of course, then it's clear. So he's probably gonna play it now. I mean, he has so much Feria.
No, I guess you do have the champion. I was looking at, you don't really have good movement lines coming out on Lizard's side. You do have the champion, though. Enough area that you could go Azurai, Windborn Champion, and a Spirit Theft. Go for a bit of a clear here, potentially on the right side, in a way that you are value trading. Goes for the draw instead, which is interesting. So that makes me think it might not be Azurai this turn. It might just be another creature and then set up for something bigger on the follow-up.
It feels like this turn there's just no need to play the Azurai because he could have gone for the value trade from Emissary to the Water Elemental. And then the Emissary would have died anyway to Rainforest Explorer.
Third Rainforest Explorer early on from card is actually really good. You prefer to have them early on in the game, I think, to try to accelerate on the board and ensure the collection. They're actually pretty decent stats for the cost.
Usually they don't see much play, but the stats for forecasts are pretty good. But I think CardNerd right now feels really good about his position because there's no way he expects Azurai. I mean, you just don't expect it.
Yeah, I think
And
from
once it's down-
CardNerd's perspective, you're looking at your opponent stockpiling Faria and cards to go for a big movement play. you're not expecting the Azurai, I wouldn't think.
Pretty sure you're just gonna get the embrace, or maybe he wants creation just to. Maybe he has a different plan. If he has something planned, he's probably gonna go creation. But I think Elderwood Embrace is probably the best.
Aurora's creation is really good on your champions.
It's true, yeah. He decides to go for creation, so he might even creation like something like Aspry or something.
It's double Azurai coming next turn. The hold there from really speaks to me for double Azurai coming next turn.
So this is gonna be fun next turn or turn after that. Thing is, Lizard, there's no pressure going on for Lizard. He can wait just how long he wants. Because the longer he waits, the more value Azurai actually generates.
Yeah, that's a great point. CardNerd is playing on the defensive, now pushing up a little bit on the left, but it's not really pushing up the board in an aggressive way. You're just moving your creatures up a space at a time because you can. So no threat. Lizard was able to wait. 14-6 Azurai immediately followed up. This one will only be a 12 because it doesn't drain an additional from the 0 from the Wood Elemental, but yeah, that's looking a little dicey now.
I just wanted to say, this is just amazing. That's right, you just never see it.
I was hoping that we didn't see the Flashwind invested that turn from Lizard because there was the potential of going for a double movement to potentially set up lethal next turn with 2 Azurai hits, but instead just going to clear everything out. Slow enough up the board, but this sets up the emissaries can clear out whatever taunts there are, and that allows the access right to the orb from the big Azurais.
The OTK would have been like fancy, but it's just not necessary. He's just under no pressure. CardNerd with his 17 Farrier, he just needs to make them count to come back into his game somehow. By not playing the Grove Guardians, or he would have helped buffing the Azurais even more. So
I think what's fantastic
really
about this line
from
from Lizard looks so greedy depending on what you're playing, but because you're playing against a green-blue, you're thinking that there potentially isn't that like any types of clears coming out. We now see the Frogify coming from its hand, but even that I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting this to be a very creature-heavy deck that doesn't really run the clears in the same way.
The sky is only the beginning.
He's still on 12 Farrier. He has Moby. He could Frogify one Azurai, Moby the other. There are
Alright,
so many 5 attacks, yeah.
Yeah, we see a really good response. As you said, CardNerd, a massive pool of Faria built up, needed to make it count, and went for a really good line. Creation onto Aurora allowed him to draw 4 extra cards that turn, finds the removal necessary in the Moby and the Frogify. That now puts, maybe not into the lead in any way, but at least gets CardNerd back even enough to fight on board.
There is champion Soul Drain into clearing the Moby, which sucks. Ah, okay, he does it like this, yeah, sure. And the Azurai is back, oh. Clear it with double Embrace, but then he just has other problems like champion. Could maybe just play it a bit greedy, play something like a Fugu, and collect with Fugaro and embrace it and get the value trade on Emissary. That might be an idea. And just even allow he could even allow the 14 damage.
Yeah, the big thing with that is then if you're running Elderwood Embraces as your only buff and you don't have Runin's Guidance in as your buffs with also that source of healing, the 14 then sets you up to just be double Wind Soldiered. We don't know if those are in Lizard's deck because it is more Flyers heavy, and I don't think we saw any in the previous game of the Flyers here, but it is something to potentially keep in the back of your mind. The problem there on CardNerd's side is if you play the Grove Guardian just to chump block for this turn, it doesn't set up well for whatever the follow-up is. If the 14-6 clears the Grove Guardian, it's left with 1 health, but you don't really have good ways to deal just that 1 extra damage.
Yeah, right. He might have to draw something, but pretty sure he doesn't run Empress commands and stuff. So we probably can assume that Lizard doesn't have any. Lizard doesn't have any Wind Soldiers in this list because he already has like 4 yellow decks, and at least one of them runs Wind Soldiers. You can have because of the Crucible format, you can't like have too many cards of too many duplicates of a card. He doesn't even want to hit face. He just wants to control the board.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of exactly the same way that we saw that previous game. Yellow Flyers just wants to outcollect you. They eventually win, but it's not really through hitting with these big creatures in spots where you're leaving things alive to push damage to the orb. You're really just forcing your opponent into awkward positions like this. CardNerd now with only 1 creature collecting up in the top right corner, not contesting any. The Grove Guardian moves over into what really is an awkward spot that you can't dictate any trade yourself. And then Lizard is just going to double collect on his defensive side again, plus the 1 up in the top corner, and then accelerate from there.
Lizard does such a good job in just outmaneuvering CardNerd. As we've mentioned, last deck from CardNerd was more a jump version. This is more green heavy with the Grove Guardians and such. And he just outmaneuvers CardNerd so much. I don't know when CardNerd has taken the last trade. It's always been Lizard who just got to hit into CardNerd's creature.
Yeah, I mean, the last one really would have been buffed Fagoro up in the top corner. I think cleared an Emissary at that time. But even that wasn't really... Like, that was a trade taken by CardNerd because it was there. It wasn't really taken in a way that it was CardNerd dictating, okay, I can go for this value trade and set some other play up in behind it. It was just that creature was already there. I think it had actually killed the Wood Elemental previous, so it was a trade because your opponent had taken a trade. So it still ended up being Lizard who had set up that play.
Exactly, and now we have the full clear and pretty much same situation as we had last game, where as soon as like a Windborn champion is ahead, there's just no coming back. As soon as you play something, the reach is just so high that whatever you play just gets countered, just killed right away. So
yeah, exactly. We have the Windborn champion in the bottom corner from Lizard's side. It can wherever it wants. If you get another movement, then it actually can reach anywhere. And there you go, top right, just like that.
with so many collections, so much collection, just Lizard can play more and more creatures, and yeah, this Lizard deck actually wins. It actually won 2 times now, and CardNerd, as you said last series already, CardNerd had an option to choose between two decks, he decided to go for this one, which lost. So he probably has a worse deck, or he thinks is a worse deck to answer, or as an answer for this.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those weird things where sitting is my final deck the strongest that I'm hoping I can get a win on this one because I don't think any of the other matchups are good anyway, and I want to save my best deck for last just in case I get a bad draw and lose with it. But in this situation, you've now lost on what potentially should be a counter Q deck, and that just feels really bad.
Yeah, I mean, you could go for the worst deck if you're already ahead. Like, if you only have to win once. But CardNerd still has to win 2 times. So I don't think he would go for the worst deck.
Right.
Because once he wins, Lizard gets to counterpick him again. Treasure map? What?
Treasure map
yeah,
was shuffled in because of Aurora.
that makes sense. See it again, just CardNerd plays cards and just gets controlled by Lizard.
Yeah, all the control in the world for Lizard. Just kind of how long is CardNerd going to hang in there? Maybe you're just looking to get a view of a specific card, but you've now seen this deck twice. Should be pretty familiar with what's coming in it. And that's a well-controlled game again by SuperLizard. Highlighted, of course, by the double Azari play, but just all of the movement that you could ever hope to want in a yellow Flyers deck that allows you to get all the value and all the collection and snowball every single advantage in that game.
I wonder what CardNerd's last deck is. It looks like some sort of Carassius.
Potentially
But he
could
has
be.
a
We
lot of
did
decks.
see that in the previous game from, the previous series. Yeah, Carassius creation deck.
Might be some sort of Rakoans without the red ones. Let's see. And problem is if CardNerd has a slow deck and he ends up beating Lizard, I think his last deck is Rush.
We do see the Gift of Rakoa in there. And the Aurora's creation as well. So does lean a little more towards the Carassius creation, more than just a standard Rakoan list that is running creations.
Not a good hand for CardNerd. That's not what he wants to see. At least he got an elemental.
Yeah, elemental start is something that you do want to see. That allows you to accelerate your well as put a jump creature in play that allows you to get some good early collection. However, like you're saying, the rest of the hand really isn't good. Frog Tossers get a ton of value, but you have to play them so late into the game, or into the mid game, I should say, that you potentially have already lost the board and you're not actually able to get that tempo back.
And especially in this matchup against Lizard, you've pointed out Flyers have a lot of attack and not so much health. So Frog Tossers not that useful at all in this matchup.
Right. The main uses for Frog Tosser onto the Emissary, maybe, but you have to clear whatever else there is on board so that the Emissary comes down to the 3/3. And even that I don't think is kind of good enough in most cases, because that requires you to have an advantage that you're able to clear something else. So it just ends up a little awkward.
Oh, he even runs Bone Collectors. That's an interesting list. So a lot of small swarm creatures are potentially good against the flyers. Because they don't have a lot of attack, and you don't really care about trades. Yeah. Azurai, I think CardNerd just has to pray that there's no Azurai again.
Yeah, as you say, and the Swarm can get pretty good value trades, or not necessarily value trades in the way that we think of you're able to clear something and that creature survives. It's more in the way of you're able to clear it at a discounted Faria cost. So, for example, the Demon Wing that exists for Lizard on the bottom left corner cost 3 Faria. Now, it of course has collected, so that ends up being a little skewed, but you could have the Rakoan Shield Mates take a value trade there because the 1/1 survives. So it's interesting. We do see Lizard pushing up that now looks like he's going to quad collect next turn. We need to see CardNerd answer with something. It's just not good enough yet.
I think CardNerd has to like combo the tossers with the clear of Manta Riders, so he gets somehow not this turn, but at some point. Okay, just wants to get. It looks like he's highlighting the tosser, so he doesn't get the. No, that doesn't make any sense. So if he.
It's not bad if you target the bottom right one, right?
Yeah, but the problem with it is he spawns a frog, which then, if he wants to play a second one, the second frog won't spawn.
Right.
If you know what.
Yeah, the first frog tosser, if you're attacking in right side, can only spawn the frog on the desert that Lizard has in the bottom right corner. So that means that the 2/2 Manta left behind, if you wanted to clear that with a frog tosser, there is no space for the frog to be summoned. So even though you're going for that play, it doesn't really end up clearing as well as you would have liked.
Yeah, now it just. Yeah, okay, as we said, frog tosser isn't that valuable, but it's still 5 mana, and you're getting out collected, so I think you. Gift of Rakoa. So it looks like he just wants to value trade and keep his Flying Manta alive. Oh wow. Yeah.
Wow.
That is interesting. So he should just soldier in the frog. I'm not sure why he would. And I'm not sure why he would need Gift of Rakoa. I don't think it fits the playstyle of blue. Maybe it just feels like if he has a super tanky creature, the small 1/1s and stuff, they just can't handle it.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same there. Very consistent. The barters coming out from Lizard's side, you know what playing. We're expecting only the creation and Gift of Rakoa in the deck. So you know what you're going to get every single time you go for that barter. As you're saying, I am very surprised by the Gift of Rakoa because you can actually get a lot of value. Your powerful creatures are generally all the 5 costs. You're looking at Windborn Champion, potentially Manta Riders, even the double Azurai play like we saw last turn, though it doesn't look like it'll be the same effect this game, is something that you could probably lean towards the creation. I'm not surprised by potentially taking one of each of the options as one creation, one Gift of the Rakoa, but I'm really surprised Lizard took both barters as Gift of the Rakoa there.
Mm-hmm. I think Lizard is really sad that the illusionist now clears his gifted Manta. I don't think that was part of the plan. And CardNerd, yeah.
Sorry, we do see the first Carassius come into CardNerd's hand there, so we now do know exactly what to expect.
So yeah, if a lizard doesn't have good answers for like 16 Carasii, so the win condition.
Yeah, you do have the first one very easily answered by potentially that was the line of thinking from Lizard there of going for the buff on his Manta instead of using the Soul Drain to clear the frog that we were seeing down there. Saves that Soul Drain for the Carassius. But CardNerd has the ability with the creation in hand to Carassius creation right away and guarantee that you have a follow-up play.
Now Lizard's starting to put on the pressure a bit. And yeah, Carassius might just be a bit too slow. It just really takes a lot of time until you get it going. Still not strong at 4.
There's a good Frog Tosser line here, I think, to go for the defensive clears. If you move the Bone Collector over into the middle lake and then Frog Tosser from the directly above the Manta Rider to kill the Manta Rider, that then lines up your Bone Collector to clear off the Manta. Bone Collector would be within range of the little risk, and you can shield mates, and you'll have the Fariat to go for a Carassius and split those potentially onto both of your defensive wells. That'll set CardNerd up to... Oh, interesting, okay. Oh, okay, yeah, same line, essentially. You get the buff, and the guaranteed frog is the same spot.
Unfortunately, he needs to play Carassius in between Demon Wing and the Bone Collector.
Not going to go for it this turn, so that to me is CardNerd waiting until he can guaranteed play the creation on the Carassius, but it is a slight window here. CardNerd does have a window where the defense is stabilized, and you potentially can start out collecting your opponent. Lizard with a couple good draws there means he can actually reset onto his side of the board and then go for a champion play next turn, but...
I would have liked CardNerd to keep his Bone Collector. That would have been, I think that would have made that line really good.
Right.
Yeah, he really wants to ensure that he gets the creation on Carassius. It's not even his last Carassius.
It just makes it that much more consistent. You know that the creations are kind of destined to be play on the Carassius at any point throughout the course of the game. So getting it while you can means that you have one in hand, for the next turn, instead of having to rely on drawing it from the deck.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, still, I mean, like, 4 Carassius or 2, it just doesn't win you the game. So you kind of have to wait for more Carassius anyway. So might as well protect your Bone Collector. That's what I feel. But, I mean, it happens.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's much more a green-yellow sack kind of secondary win condition is if you can get that Bone Collector rolling. This deck from CardNerd, you're not really expecting the Bone Collector to be the kind of be-all, end-all that you need it to be in some other plays. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that it does get cleared. It kind of did its job, but you could have got a lot more value out of it.
Lizard completely approaching this game in a different fashion. Last game and the game before last, he just controlled the board as much as possible. Didn't even hit for 14 with the Azurai. Now just takes every opportunity or takes the first opportunity to hit orb. And he really feels like that swarm from CardNerd. He just can't deal with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a position where it looked like Lizard was saying, okay, this is potentially the only chance that I have to start pushing some damage and pushing that aggression. Once all of these Carassius are starting to, and not only the Carassius, but all the smaller creatures as well, are starting to swarm around CardNerd's orb, there's no good way for Lizard to punch back through this unless you have multiple creatures on that are able to push up. Right now, I think we've seen 2 Soul Drains invested, so you're not able to go for a Soul Drain and then a movement play to get your creature through and hit the orb. And
Embrace the
Lizard
wild wind.
also is a card behind, so if you're thinking long-term into fatigue, you're potentially also not getting there either. So it's a spot where Lizard said, okay, I have to go for a little bit of damage because I can, because I'm not going to get the chance later on.
Yeah. So I feel like Lizard has to start to draw for his Azurai, save up for it, and that might save him. Other than
Yeah,
that,
that potentially is a good one. As Azurai in combination with some of the creatures which have all of this movement means you can then get the follow-up trades to clear a way through. But I mean, right now we see it. There's every single angle is at least 2 creatures deep to try to hit through to the orb. So it's really starting to look like CardNerd has the defenses set up. There's a lot of movement in hand, okay? There's a lot of movement in hand from Lizard to try to move creatures in the right way to create an angle onto the orb here. But I think you're right. I think it has to be Azurai.
what stands out to me as well is he bordered Lizard twice, and he went for the gift of Rakoa, and we both were kind of, what? Why would he go for that? And now thinking about it, what if he went for the same play like he did last game, where he just went for creation Azurai? That would have been an idea, but I feel like at this point he didn't feel like it, or he felt like it wouldn't get to this far, or he would need it.
Yeah, I think you're right with the didn't think he'd get this far. It was the gift of the Rakoas are buffs to make an immediate tempo play and then try to push through into the orb exactly the way that he did before CardNerd was able to spam all of these creatures out onto the board. So
I probably wasn't expecting the illusionist to clear his buffed Rakoa, gift of Rakoa, and baby Manta. I think that kind of caught him off guard.
yeah, that was definitely a big play.
It only took like CardNerd 2 turns to. Lizard was at a point where he kind of full cleared the board from CardNerd, but it took him 2 turns to get back up, the swarm back up, which is pretty crazy.
Couple defensive movements here from CardNerd. Shieldmates are a really good defensive unit because it requires not only a creature attacking into that shieldmate, but also the 1/1 afterwards.
Exactly. So keeping them close to orb is very valuable. So even if Soul Drain comes out, you still have another wall of defense.
Just requires so much extra to punch through because then if you can get another creature in front as well, it's 3 attacks necessary.
I don't think there's a way for CardNerd to ever kill Iona. Iona cannot be attacked, so it's probably gonna collect forever, but probably won't make much progress because it's just gonna hit a wall of creatures.
Oh, that's actually a pretty big draw. Has another Carassius in hand still, so that'll be 4 when that one gets played. because that's the
exactly.
third, I believe.
You're right on that. He's gonna be happy to see that. And he even has the gift or a core in hand, so. And look at how. Wow, he did again. He went really safe and just this before he has another one.
And I think that's the second natural one from the deck as well. So we're expecting one more Carasius in the bottom 10 cards for CardNerd and two more Aurora's Creations. So that next one potentially won't be the one that ends the game, but the one after will.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if it depending on the timing, because it does look again like we're waiting for Lizard to hit a bunch of creatures onto the board at the same time, then play Azurai, then have all of this extra movement tech to be able to take the correct clears in the right order to get an angle of attack for Azurai to punch through for the lethal damage. And I just don't know if CardNerd gets enough Carasius. I think CardNerd just has enough Carasiuses to spam the board here, but it's really close still.
I mean, he can Medallion. Ugura, Medallion, and Carasius.
The sky is
So
only
he has
the
like
beginning.
10 Carasius.
I think that actually makes the board weaker to what Lizard's game plan potentially would be, though, because then your shield mates turn into Carasius, and you lose that extra bit of defense.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but it would be kind of funny.
Oh, it would be fantastic for the follow-up Carasius, of course, because then you get, if you can get the trades, you just have every space on the board filled with Carasius. But if your opponent is able to hit that Azurai play that we're expecting it to be, I think it does make your board a little weaker to only that out coming from Lizard.
Could also have Medallion their shield mates. So, yeah.
That would have been a good one, because then it's every single unit is an extra unit to attack through.
Might have been worth it, because that would be the only way for Lizard to win, by just somehow maneuvering the cards around and hit orb. But that's impossible with all these shield mates and stuff.
Yeah, every angle would have been at least attack deep. And also, shield mates being a 2/2 means once you do go for that Azure, they go down to a 0/2, and all of the trades that you would take to try to get through that wall end up being your creatures survive every single time because they're taking damage.
Yeah, these are just kind of funny lines. But yeah, kind of unfortunate for Lizard that he didn't draw his Azurai the entire time. It's down to 6 cards. And yeah, it's probably just too far gone.
Yeah, another kind of interesting thing to note there is that because both players are actually so low in their decks, they potentially wouldn't want to be drawing as much as they have been, because then you don't really want to be the one to fatigue first in a matchup that currently looks like it is going to go the distance to that spot. But because CardNerd went for the Urn on Fagoro and Drew, that kind of let Lizard go for the maps to draw, because both of them need exactly that one thing. CardNerd now gets it, Carasius and the extra creation, just clicking as fast as possible onto the board here. Whereas Lizard, we know, is going for the hopeful Azurai play, which now I don't think you can get through anyway. I think it's too late.
Yeah, at this point, it's probably too late. But another thing to point out is CardNerd is down to 10 minutes of his game time.
Right.
And he's gonna have to play another game. And especially he's gonna have to play another Carasius game. And Carasius game just take a lot of time. So we might get to a point in game 5 where he has to just blitz out his moves, and you can't do that when you have to play 16 Carasius.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stream here as well. We are maybe 6 or
The
7
block singer
turns.
might be insane.
Oh my god. Is it enough?
Are you serious?
About 6 or 7 turns, so it's early on in the current game, and both players are about 5 minutes used from this game. So I'd expect that turn timer isn't exactly going to run right down, but if we do get another pretty even matchup, it could be tight. It's something interesting to point out as you're mentioning there. So
I won one series in Seasonal Cup against Teddy because he ran out of time, and I was down to 10 seconds. So I think that was pretty much the only time where timer actually mattered.
well, unfortunate there. I don't know if Lizard actually that he
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
on that turn.
Wonder-
4 damage punch through with the Bloodsinger there.
He's down to 10. He might just not have enough damage. He
It's
still
not going to
needs
be enough.
Yeah. He still needs to kill a lot of...
Here's the full board of Carasius coming.
Yeah.
If
Kill
Lizard
9 more.
if Lizard could somehow generate a Garrett, it would be enough. Even a
Garrett,
Firestorm potentially would be enough. You could clear 6, 7 with an attack, Soul Drain for 8. 28-27s. We see the big gift Rakoa's coming out. It's a barter burned. I don't think mattered on side. There might be one creation left, but I don't even think that's the case. Down to 7, but I just don't. There's the
Oh my
Azurite,
God.
just too
Oh,
late.
he's gonna
Hard.
be killed now.
Absolutely love it. We had both players really thick out through the course of that game, and CardNerd hit it first. It was Lizard looking for the 1 in X every single turn when you're drawing, where that is getting closer and closer, and there was a lot of turns that Azrai play potentially could have won the game, but CardNerd, I think, really well executed on saving the Carasius plays for exactly when you had 1 in hand as a follow-up. Guarantees that they're going to be on board so that you can go for the creations, and eventually just overwhelms the yellow flyers.
He read that game really well. But now, it's not a rush deck, so... But still, I think Lizard has a really fast deck here. Especially with the fairies, and CardNerd's game or deck needs time to set up.
Right.
So, like these Raccoon Shield Mates is exactly what you want to see because it just slows down, blocks your orb, as time.
Yeah, we do see potentially really strong plays. We're seeing so far. Sunsilk Fairy as well. It's a very event-heavy deck. If you get that effect to flip, you potentially see it accelerate up the board very quickly. Is this a matchup, knowing what your opponent is playing, that you would go rush straight down the middle, like it seems like we're seeing Lizard hover, or do you go for a bit of the same side and deny your opponent from collecting?
Everywhere.
It's tough. I think it's really tough for Lizard because he has like a lot of high hitting creatures, like the Snowstorm Charger can get up to like 8 attack, but it only has 3 health. And again, these swarm creatures, they don't care about how much attack you have. So I think whatever Lizard does, it's gonna be hard. I think he's gonna have to play a really, really good game to win this. Because even the fairy might collect, but probably just gonna trade into a 2/2 shield mates. What's that gonna do?
Yeah, the fairy has the same problem like we were talking about some of the flyers in the previous games. The health is still so low, only 2 even once its effect triggers, that CardNerd is able to have creatures that get a value trait onto it. So even though it is a bunch of damage potential, it still is very easy to clear from the
Exactly. Oh, George, are you still here?
Yep.
You were cutting off for a second there, and the archer might be really good because CardNerd doesn't have a good answer for it. And yeah, just pushing phase as fast as possible, and with the flash win. Whoa, yeah, that's gonna be a lot of damage.
It's going to invest everything this turn.
Even did really well in terms of order. Oh, that's actually lethal. That's crazy. Are you serious? Are you serious?
Turn 4.
Oh man. CardNerd is gonna be so sad.
Turn 4 lethal puts it together. Yellow events with wisdom. Windstorm Charger is capped at +6. The Ranger is not, and that one extra event that it otherwise wouldn't have been able to attack with, I think.
Lizard did really well to flash win the charger first and not move it because
Right.
that's that additional +1 from the archer. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. If you go for the movement first because you still have the flash win to move and attack the orb, you actually end up 1 damage less there. So really well played combo from Lizard. I not out of really nowhere.
Yeah, that was absolutely crazy, and he even got these cards from Wisdom. So yeah, that was wow. That sucks for CardNerd. That really.
All right, so that was a really interesting game 5. We went the full best of 5 there with SuperbLizard and CardNerd. Really good games and really good finish. So SuperbLizard will move on. We'll look at the brackets really quickly here. And whoop, there you go. So we just watched this game right here, SuperbLizard versus CardNerd. SuperbLizard moves on. He'll play against Summerflame, and we've actually streamed Summerflame earlier. He went on to beat Nightingale after we watched him with his Rakoan deck, it looks like. Meanwhile, Amoeba beat Cheholic, and Mastermind and Jory is still going on. Now, Jory is still streaming as far as I know, so you can watch his matches. You can watch the other side of the bracket. Depending on whether Jory wins this or not, we'll either stream, if he wins, we'll let him stream his match, and we'll just stream Summerflame versus Lizard. Okay, we're going to take a short break while we set things up. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back shortly.